unfortunately. And welcome to Studio X and all of that. And the thing is, most of the photographs here I've been shooting for the last 4 years from Central India. And since I've been coming back to Bombay, I'm finding the same kind of things that happen in Central India back home. So my involvement in displacement, demolitions, it was a pattern. Like every scale there's something happening. So I also want to introduce you guys to Frank, and Prathamesh, who's from Sion, by the way, one of the slums whose photographs are featured around here. And if anyone has any questions about Sion, don't ask me, you can ask them. And and Frank, for instance, is a little bit of a local hero because he got beaten up by the cops for trying to protect his father. And he takes pride in it, but unfortunately he has to do his studies like anything else. So Sion, you can ask them. Guys from Golibar would have been here, but unfortunately Ganesh Chaturthi and one of our close associates is actually in the ICU, so a lot of people are there with him. Otherwise, from every slum here there could have been someone, but only these two boys had time today. So to begin with, we have just 3 introductory scrolls. Each of them kind of symbolize something. These are issues in Bombay mostly. Demolition drives, and this is from the airport where about 8 lakh people. Like I think everyone who's flown into Bombay has seen the slums across the airport. Now there's a project to redevelop this entire area. There are about 8 lakh people who are going to be facing demolition, and it's a kind of a short war of attrition taking place. Like one slum has gone, one is coming back, and some people are happy with the rehabilitation, some people are not. But the biggest issue is actually what's happening in Golibar, which are these 3 photographs here, where in Bombay we have something called the Slum Rehabilitation Authority, what happens is, say, supposing I'm a builder, and there's these couple of shanties down there. Now, if I want to develop this area, I go to the slum dwellers, and I need to get like 70% consent from all of the slum dwellers, where I will build a building for them, put everything, give everybody a flat, and some extra flats I'll make for myself to sell the surplus and for my own profit. Now, unfortunately, this entire, what is supposed to be a welfare scheme has been hijacked by the profit, basically. Like the builders, basically, they don't ask for consent anymore. They just have fraudulent papers, and they go to the SRA, and they just said, look, these guys agreed to us. So, for instance, Prathamesh and Frank would one day just be sitting at home, and somebody will come with eviction papers, and they'll be like, hey, who's our builder? We never heard of this guy. Where did he show up? We have some other builder. How did this happen? So this is actually a huge issue in Bombay, which is not so much spoken about, partially because it's widespread, and every newspaper in the city unfortunately has some stake in realty and real estate. So they often completely remove aspects of, hi Falguni, thanks for being late. They completely remove aspects of real estate issues. So for instance, these kind of rehabilitation projects, there are about 85 projects in Bombay where similar kind of complaints take place. The slum dwellers said, we never accepted him as a builder, we never wanted him as a builder. And of course the builders, like they go to the High Court, and the High Court keeps giving anti-people orders where they say, no, the papers are correct. Why are you creating a dispute over this meeting? The project has already started. So unfortunately, very interestingly, there's this bigger link to this. Now, since I'm a writer and an investigative journalist, all the judges who have given orders against the slum dwellers and for the people, they themselves have committed fraud and grabbed a plot of land in Bombay. So there is a very long circle like this. Of course, I cannot show you a photograph of a judge, sitting on his property with his foot up. But so hopefully someday I might. So it's a circle of exploitation, and the welfare scheme is under serious attack from a lot of grassroots movements. And of course, one of the people who's brought up most of the issues of the fraud is our friend right now in the ICU, which is why we are a little tense about it. For instance, everyone here may know about the Adarsh building scam. He was the guy who originally filed the RTIs on this issue, and today he's in the ICU. So that's Simpreet Singh. So he used to be basically a test student. He was
he's the one under.
Yeah.
Because I spoke with him recently as well.
Yeah, he's got dengue fever. He's almost on a ventilator. The thing is, he was just a student, and I think backstory to Bombay is that in 2005, 80,000 slums were demolished in one day. They just marched through slum after slum after slum, kept calling them all illegal encroachments, and simply at that point, and all these people, they started protesting in Azad Maidan, and they stayed there for 3 months. And then they got, lathi charged, they got beaten up, and from that day onwards, they started picking up the right to a home issue. Then they started finding out that people who already had homes were losing their homes. So a right to a home started mixing with people to protect their homes. And then they started looking at, attacking the others, builder frauds, Hirannandani builders. I mean, anyone knows the Hirannandani builders and what they've done in Powai side, they've literally got land for like nothing. And you're supposed to use it to rehouse the poor, but they've built malls and parking lots. And the High Court stepped on their foot, like, hey, you cannot do this. So this is basically Bombay, and I'll keep coming back to it as we go across. Then this is the same place. This is one day there was a demolition drive in a place called Ambujwadi, which is referred to as an illegal encroachment, but unfortunately these people didn't think it was illegal. So they just came on the road, the bulldozer came on the road, and it had no place to go. Nobody shouted, nobody moved. Meanwhile in Sion, which is where our guests of honor are from, one day there was a building, there was one house which the police show up to demolish without permission, like they don't have permission for it, they never had a notice for it. So everybody said, you do things legally, you just come here. If you want to demolish the house, show us the permission that you have to do it. The police didn't listen, they demolished everything, they beat up a few people. And once they did that, Frank's father Nelson was beaten up, and therefore Frank goes to protect his father, and they beat Frank up. And Frank is a science student from Andrews at that point. The thing is, a few days later, the people started rebuilding that house. Like, if we are going to illegally demolish it, we are going to rebuild it. And once they started rebuilding the house, the police again tried to re-demolish it. And this time, this was your question. And this time what happened was that a lot of the people sat on this is the day of a Bharat Bandh, by the way. If you remember, BJP had gone on, so unfortunately the police were not on Bandh that day, they had to break down a house. So they show up again and everybody was lying down, they started dragging everybody up. Now, as you can see these images and further more images ahead, all the people doing were lying down, but they were all in jail for, I think, 25 of them were arrested that day, they were all in jail for rioting. So apparently if you lie down under a bulldozer, you're rioting. So that's our police, by the way. This is again Golibar. This was a demolition drive that was stopped because police were not even allowed to go through. And this was a time when there was some debate with the state. Now the state knows of all of these fraudulent projects, and unfortunately sometimes there's pressure coming from somewhere else to let these things go. So at this point, when all the papers were shown to the Chief Minister, he did intervene and he gave a verbal stay order, please do not demolish this house. It happened a few days ago in the same area where apparently they wanted to demolish these 10 houses because they said, look, we have built your house, there's a building there, why don't you go live in it? But if you saw the building, it's nothing but an empty lot. The building exists only on paper, and apparently the government was convinced that we can give these guys a house, but these people, hey, where is the house? There is nothing there. So this time again the Chief Minister intervened and he stopped that project. So this is also from now the other thing is you'll find a lot of graffiti in a lot of the slums in Bombay. This is basically Hi Jameen Amcha Haq. I mean the haq isn't there. And then this is Chauda Mala. And this is from their slum. Now the thing is this rehabilitation building in Sion, built by a guy called Sudhakar Shetty, who ran something called a Deepa Bar, which was very well involved with cricket betting a couple of years ago. We went to jail for it, and he eventually has been granted a redevelopment project. He's really good friends with another man called Baba Ramdev, who keeps talking about black money. And unfortunately, this Sudhakar Shetty is one of the kings of black money in Bombay. Now he builds this building. The foundation is there for 7 floors. It's 14. So you tell me if that is legal or illegal, but you enter that area, this is written up there. How the hell are there 14 floors? So if you want to, anybody want to live in a place like that when the foundation is built for 7, they make 14 because hey, they're more slum dwellers, just give it to everyone. So anyway, then we come to unfortunately central India. These are all photographs of villages that were burned down during combing operations in the Maoist state civil war over the last Badepalli burned down in 2009, Borguda burned down in 2006, Badepalli again burned down in 2009. And this is a village of people who escaped the conflict from Chhattisgarh. They went to and lived in Andhra Pradesh because they wanted to escape the violence. Now what happened to them was that they started getting into a conflict with the local tribals over water, land. So the local tribals who were being exploited by the people in Andhra anyway started to attack the Chhattisgarhi migrants who escaped the conflict. But eventually there is a happy ending because a lot of people went to these places and they explained to the Adivasis that you cannot do this and we The ones who burnt it down, they actually said that we are also human beings. We know what happened to these people. And it was a bit of a misunderstanding. And there was a misunderstanding that was clear. Apparently there was one man who was manipulating both sides for profit. So once that man was kicked out of the equation, everybody decided to continue living in that egalitarian society. So that's one happy ending today. Continue. This is again graffiti in San Koliwara. And graffiti is, the boys actually in science had seen graffiti in Golibar. And apparently they got inspired and decided to do the same thing. And you find a lot of symbols are similar. For instance, the crying house. I found crying houses across slums in Bombay. It was the same kind of thing. So, हम नई builder को हटाएंगे. You know, थोड़ा गलत आ गया है यहाँ पे, थोड़ा कॉमा लगाना है. I know this thing on top. Anyway, this is again Badepalli, the same thing. This dog has been following us around. We do not know where to put him, so we put him here. These are the coal fields of Jharkhand, where there'll be more photographs I'll show you, where all of what is happening with industrialization is that it does not even affect the people who are displaced, but even the transport routes are completely destroyed because all the fields will be covered in coal dust. And that photograph, for instance, the one over there, is what the rice looks like, and we'll get to that in a bit. And that's Badepalli. And of course, Bombay, if anyone knows, you'll find people sleeping everywhere. I found it one day, me and a friend went for a very early photo shoot, and we found people sleeping on the rooftop of Mumbai Central Station. And then there's another one. This is a slum that really exists in one of the corners of Mumbai. There's Mankhurd railway station, and there's a highway that leads to Vashi. And between the railway station and the highway, right in the corner somewhere, there's some 20 hutments. They're completely out of sight, nobody even knows they exist. Now, Kareem Bhai, for instance, this is the day his house is demolished. Now, this is the same day the Sion boys are facing the demolition. And Kareem Bhai tells me that his house was demolished a year earlier also. And he had a photograph of it. So I decided, let's take a photograph of the photograph. So of course, this image also is going to Kareem Bhai, and I presume, I hope his house is not going to get demolished again, because then I got to take another picture of it. But again, for these people, the issue always has been, the government has a law which says any slum that comes after 1995 is illegal and has to be evicted. Now, Kareem and all of the people here, like for instance, there was one lady who basically came 3 years ago to Bombay because she did not have land in MP because it disappeared in a flood. So there are a lot of people who sometimes don't have an option. They come for employment, they come to work, they come as migrants, and some people who have no option, no choice. So this is a very complex issue which I can go on for 3 hours, provided there are questions, but we will get there. And then we'll go ahead. This is the village of Tarweka that was burned down in 2009. And the thing that struck me the most about this village, it has no access to electricity, no road, no government official goes there. It has hand pumps. About 6 years ago, the government stopped going there because the government was convinced this is a Maoist area. So they basically cut off all government, nothing. There is no teachers, nothing. And the thing is, I asked these people about development, and all the Adivasis, they kept saying, look at the rice we have. And they're like, I had 20 quintals of rice, they burnt it down. I had so much corn, they burnt it down. And he just said, we're fine. We need electricity, we need a road, but you cannot, but the fact that the rice is being burned down, no, we don't accept that. And in fact, there are a lot of other photographs also, which we will see eventually in the slideshow, that shows like lots of, 30 quintals of rice. This entire room, for instance, could be filled with rice and ash. So the government actually has a strange policy of, it's counterinsurgency tactic, which is very well known across the world, of actually targeting the base of wherever the so-called militants are coming from to terrorize them. It's a very complex but very well-known thing that was done in Vietnam, it was done in Kashmir, everywhere. The idea is not to attack terrorists because you never know who is one. The idea is to go after the base. And once you go after the base, you terrorize the people enough, they might start coming to your side. For instance, in this village there was a man, and the Maoists, for instance, were roaming around nearby. I think it was in a village right next to this. And there was this guy who apparently raped. He was a Maoist area commander, and he raped an 18-year-old girl. And apparently the villagers, I asked them, why didn't you speak up about this? Did you tell someone that this Maoist has raped a woman? And he said something in Hindi, and he said, "Hum itne bade aadmi ke bare mein aise kaise bol sakte hain? Like, how can you say this about such a big man?" And eventually, they did go to some commander who said that your commander is raping our girls. And before that commander could get to this man escaped. The commander escapes. 3 years later, he returns to the village as a special police officer with the police. Now he's working for the other side. And he was the guy who led them to this village to kill 4 people who died over here. And again, there were 3 rapes, documented rapes here. So there's a very strange cycle of, one guy going from this side, and it happens in almost every other village in Dantewada. Anyway, these are more photographs of Bombay. This is on the dumping ground at Malkot, where I can show you. People basically live like this. Pass it on.
Shall maybe you can continue while the photographs are up.
Alright. So these are just images of, this is a landscape. This is a village called, a slum called Bhimchaya. That was Sant Nirankari Nagar. This is Golibar during a demolition drive. And a good demolition drive there also. Same up here. That's Shailesh Kamkar, who would have been here if it wasn't Ganesh Chaturthi and he was busy. Now in 2009, I was in Dantewada district where we heard that overnight, and then at about 3 o'clock, about 4 o'clock in the evening, we got a phone call from some journalist we knew who said that the police have surrounded our village. We didn't have any other information on what happened, so I told my friend, let's just go and find out what exactly happened in that place. And he was telling me it's dangerous because when you're going into a village, when the forces are there, there's no guarantee of what can happen. So we went at night and we kind of tossed a coin to see should we go or not, and we kind of said heads to go, tails to go in 5 minutes. So we eventually ended up in the village at night, and by the time we showed up there, we got a phone call from the police who said we've killed 3 monks. And when we were on the spot, we asked everybody around, do you have any information over these 3 people who were killed? And they said, no, we don't know anyone who was killed. So eventually we went to another village where we find out that 3 people were basically picked up from this village. They were just taken. And we asked them, were they shot? Was there gunfire? Was there shooting? They're like, no, nothing. They were just picked up. And eventually, by the time we reached the police station, we realized all 3 of them were killed. And the funniest thing is, you might see it in the slideshow also, is that the police said that they were shot dead in the forest. And we found blood on the roads. And when I asked the police, why, if you're saying it's in the forest, then why is there pools of blood on the road? He said, so when we killed them, we brought them to the police station. To bring them to the police station, we must have left on the road, so the blood must have come there. But of course, that doesn't make sense because the geography of it is such. The village is there, the police station is there. Now, if they shot them in the forest, there should be trickles of blood this way and a pool of blood. But it was the other way around. There's a pool of blood and then there's a trickle of blood going that way. So it didn't make any sense. You did shoot them there, and it's a very well-known thing in India. Extrajudicial killing is one of our fortes. So eventually, one of these boys called Channu Mandari, the other 2 boys I found out were actual Maoists. Channu Mandari lived in one of the villages, and now once the villagers found out that he was killed, they all started marching to the police station to get his body back. And this is his father and his mother outside waiting for him to be released. This is after a demolition drive in Sant Nirankari Nagar. And this is also during a demolition drive where, of course, all the policemen were really ashamed of what they were doing. They were being yelled at, and that's, of course, the expression. These are images of protests across Bombay. This took place, I think, last year during pouring rain, these 2. And this one. And this, I think, that one. I think about 5,000 people are marching from Golibar to Mantralayam. And this is an image of Adivasis who had marched from 3 different districts in Maharashtra to demand land rights in Bombay. In their villages, but they came to demand it in Bombay. Right. Shall we do the slideshow or images and then slideshow? Pictures, right? Alright. Coming back to Ghar, this is Garib Nagar Basti that was burned down by accident, arson, we really don't know. This is the village of Tarmetla that was burned down in I think 2011. This is a photograph of a place in Ambedkar Nagar, which is, I took this picture during Diwali and I found it quite a nice, beautiful setup. But this has now gone for the airport, I mean the MIM, Mumbai International Airport. This is again Taj Mahal that was burned down. And this is an image of the bomb blast on last, I mean, of course, in the Opera House blast. There were these people who were living here, and apparently the blast took place somewhere in this corner. So I kind of found it a very strange thing, and nobody really knew who they were, what happened to them. And of course, life goes on. Children will play, they'll still watch TV after the house is broken down. They'll still play, and they'll protest, and of course, these are people who made a house out of a bus in Hyderabad. And some policemen have shame. This man started crying, and of course I went and gave him my card and said, "You want to talk to me? Please do." But the police inspector later found him and told him, "If you want to cry, please go cry in the back. Don't cry in front of the people." And as I was talking about earlier about Jharkhand, these are what happens when coal enters a rural economy. This is his entire crop is covered in coal dust. This man and this man. Then we have Kalinga Nagar, it's an informal labor. And this lady is Gandala Beri. Now her village of Lingagiri was attacked by the paramilitaries in 2006. And she was 9 months pregnant when it happened. So 4 people were killed, a man was stabbed, I think his photograph might be there. And she basically ran into the forest with all of the villagers, like they all grabbed whatever they could, put them on belgadis, carried them. And she basically gave birth to her child 3 days into the forest, and she called him Arvi Ramadu, which in Telugu is the boy born in the jungle. Now this photograph was taken when she went back to her village 3 years later and rebuilt her house and started living there again. And of course she's much happier being back home. But 3 years later something else happened. If you know, there was an attack in Basagoda village again this summer. And this was about 2 kilometers away from her village. And the people who, like, she wanted to go back, and there were a lot of human rights activists who helped her go back. And she asked, all of them went and asked him, like, you promised us that nobody will attack us anymore, but they're attacking us again. This is the rice that This is the rice that nobody will buy, and only the people who have it can eat it. They can't sell it anymore. And now these are 5 photographs of different land acquisition issues across India actually. This is the POSCO issue, which is again another kind of, there are people who don't want to go and there are people who do want to go. This is an image which is slightly, I know, a little unorthodox, but this was packed with Adivasis. There were hundreds of Adivasis here, and they were all wanting to talk to the government officials wanted to talk to them about, Tata is giving this, Tata will give you that, you'll get this many jobs, you'll get that many jobs. But one Adivasi man just got up, said something, and they all just got angry, they started yelling at them, and they just left. 5 minutes, these guys sat here not knowing what to do. Like all the reporters and journalists just coming and looking at them, taking pictures, like, wow, you guys really don't know what to tell them. And this is an older story. This is in 1982. There was this war hero called Gangaram Kalundia. He's a 19-year-old Adivasi boy, joins the armed forces, I think in the 60s. He fought in the Indo-Pak wars, both the wars. He won the President's Medal, and he retired and went back to his village as a junior lieutenant. And once he got back to his village, he realized that his entire house, his village, was going to be displaced with a dam. So he started organizing his villagers, because we have a constitutional right that you have to ask us before you do something to us. But the cops still went to his village. They picked him up, bayoneted him to death, put his body outside the police jeep and drove across the area. And 8 years after that, the project did get cancelled because the World Bank withdrew the money. So, and right now in Gangaram Kalundia, the area, if anybody goes to Chaibasa and just says Gangaram Kalundia, everybody knows it. This is, again, now these 2 photographs of Kalinga Nagar. Kalinga Nagar is where Tata wants to open up it's an industrial park. And the Adivasis there have been, of course, also protesting against the displacement, against the policy, the rehabilitation. And I think in 2006, there was a firing where some 14 Adivasis were killed, and 1 policeman was also killed. Since then, things have just gone from bad to worse. You'll find Adivasis armed like this, not allowing any outsider to come in. And then this man is apparently a Maoist who is from that village. So after what radicalized him, what made him to drive a gun is a question we cannot ask. Alright, I think that ends except for these two random photographs here.
There are some questions.
Oh yeah.
Just sit on the floor.
That's because they're on the floor. Alright, in Dantewada, once the strategic hamleting started, this was in 2004-2005, there are government figures that said 644 villages in the entire district were emptied and people were forced into camps. And the Supreme Court said this is illegal, you have to allow people to go back home. So once the Supreme Court said that, people started going back. For instance, this photograph here is of people looking at their house after 4 years because they ran in the dark, they don't know what happened to it. And people are put into camps like this. And all of those are people basically going back to their houses. So after a certain point, they all started moving back. But once they started moving back, they still had to face combing operations. The Maos would come and interrogate them, harass them. The same thing happened. And I think the reason they're going back is also because when they were living in Andhra Pradesh, their villages were constantly burned down by the forest department. Because from Chhattisgarh, where they faced the counterinsurgency policy, they come to Andhra, they rebuild a house, and they're breaking a law because apparently you're in a reserve forest. That's when the forest department attacks them and says, you can't stay here. So from both ends, they're getting attacked. So they realize, at least the houses back in Chhattisgarh is our land, our house. We might as well get our houses demolished there. So they started moving back. And I think the last is the slideshow.
Those two, Konema.
That's the road to Abujmart. We are under the curtain. So that's the road that takes you there. And apparently these are people going home, which, you can see how the government services are functioning.
Sorry, it's interesting because you said it a couple of times now. When you were putting up the image, you said that this is where the government of India, and in previous conversations you said it's just mostly sort of like a fiction.
It is a fiction.
It is a fiction that,
No, this is where the government will not cross. There's basically been, I think, two or three.
Because there are just a bunch of scattered hamlets, really.
No, there are thousands. There's a whole lot of villages inside. The thing is, there's one government official a very brave man, who decided to cross over. And he went and met the villagers on the other side. He comes back, and all the policemen basically thought he was kidnapped.
Right.
Because, oh my God, he went into the Maoist territory. But when he comes back and he starts saying, he started abusing Chidambaram. He's like, you cannot come in a helicopter, land your helicopter, talk to the police and solve the Maoist problem. He started saying that, people are not bothered by the Maoists, they're bothered by the police. Now, a government official starts saying that, and of course he retired this year, and he was this very strange man with this giant beard, and he apparently got transferred 29 times in his entire career. So he was an honest guy. But that's it. That's all the government that went across. They don't go across. And in fact, there's a superintendent of police who, one of his professors from JNU came to meet him when he was the SP of Dantewada. And he says, if you cross in this area and if you come back, we'll shoot you. And he officially, he said this was like an official shooter side. Anybody coming from that side is a Maoist. And of course, this guy also, a few years later, the same policeman went and shot himself, which is the tragic cycle of violence that continues. All right, that last thing. People are basically protesting that we not give the builder permission to do this.
The first of these demolitions happened when you said in 2005? Was that when did the first of these demolitions happen?
Massive ones.
Yeah.
I was 2005.
Where 80
But not
houses.
these. I wasn't there.
Well, no, yeah.
I was a young kid.
I know. But those are the first. Yeah.
No, they big demolition take place. Those are massive ones.
Those are the big ones.
80,000 houses
Yeah.
disappearing in a day.
80,000 homes.
So how many other massive demolitions are taking place since then? So how many other massive demolitions are taking place since then? So you said the first of them, so how many
There's
others?
some we don't even know. I mean, they're always taking place. There's one time when I was in 3 different slums, so they're taking place on the same day. So that was the house that was meant to be, they started reconstructing when they came to demolish it. And once they came to finish what happened, all the residents were going to fuck. So they just started saying, get up. You did your job, you wanted to demolish the house, we need it now. The sound actually. these are all from different demolition drives because there have been 5 since November 2010. This demolition drive took the same day as the High Court order that said the chief promoter of the builder should be arrested for fraud. So you can see the government arresting all the chief promoters and taking down the houses. The crime policeman was crying during this scene.
I wonder what would happen if there was like,
This is a woman who failed during a demolition drive. And this woman is going to see the damage caused to her house after they started taking it. Lady in the middle. This lady she teaches children tuitions. Her name is Elizabeth, and she often yells at the police. This is exactly how terrorism is done. There's always injustice that they experience every time. And now this is that incident, Chhattisgarh, that boy was killed. So I have some few images of people marching. So as I said earlier, we found out that people were killed, and the first thing we went and saw was like, first thing we went and saw was that people were actually beaten up in nearby villages, and the police said we never went in. So they made people lie down and then apart the guns. So they say that. And that's the march to the village. The village in Passagoda, 4 years of this lay like this. And people came back and I came back with them to just take their house. Two members of her family were killed by the Mars. And yet she still rather live in their area. Good job. These are the camps. And this is another village that's gone down. 2000. This is Badekali. That's another village. Tarmaka. Village called Pisepa. Last over again. Katteman. That's the rice I was talking to you about. It's all rice. It's graffiti. In a place where nobody can read the mouse like that. Speaks for itself. That's it. And just one last note on the portraits. There was this first photograph in that set. There's a man called Lal Singh Thakur. These are whether they supported them or whether they didn't support. Because it's not really, it's such an ill-defined thing also, because how many factions are there? And also how much infighting is there? And right now they're behaving like a bunch of 17-year-olds bitching about each other. One guy gets kicked out of the party because he said something nasty about this other guy. This guy got this one killed, this guy goes to forms another faction here. I mean, they are so broken up as it is, and there's no, I mean, what they call as their ideology also is also, for instance, Adivasis have often been accusing the Maoists, not understanding. It's like, there's a comment which a friend often uses, like, यहाँ पे कोई माओवादी प्रॉब्लम नहीं, यहाँ पे राववादी प्रॉब्लम है. All these bloody Raos and all these Telugu Reddys, they come and making, what is this? We don't want to have state power, we're just happy with what we have. So it's a very complex situation which is, of course, can go on and on and on. I mean, because there are so many different aspects of this argument.
Have you faced any problem from the police or Maoists because of taking these photos?
Police, yes, repeatedly, often. In Chhattisgarh, I was beaten up by them once. I was put into a police van and they kept abusing me. तू ही साला हमारे खिलाफ लिखता है. तू ही बहुत गाँव गया था ना बड़ेपल्ली. And the funniest thing was they beat me up, and there were these two other policemen in the van where I was, and then they came to beat me up again. And that guy, I was talking to him for 15 minutes. And he kind of understood what I was doing, and he kind of protected me. And the other guys came with like black masks, no name tags. They were like looking, they were like, that guy, "Yaar, ye chor hai, kitna marega isko." He's had enough, leave him alone. Then again, in this Punjab going, there was this IS guy who gave a command to another police squad. And once they found out that this guy was the son of an IS middle class, upper middle class idiot from Bombay got beaten up in Dantewada. They thought we have to do something. This guy overreacted and told this inspector, beat him up more till he shuts up. That inspector came and said, "Kya bewakufi hai sarkar wale bolte hain." There's this very strange kind of system. Like there's nothing clear cut. For instance, I could work and function there for quite a long time, like 2 years I could. But then eventually again there was a kind of bail threat I got from it, which kind of put an end to it. It's a very, very complex situation. In Bombay, there's never been a problem, except in Sayan Kolibara, the police officer there is an asshole. More like he just yells at me. Like I'm taking 4 gas, and he just enough. I'm like, I'm doing my job, you do yours also. And they've attacked the camera. Like there's a filmmaker who's functioning there, they tried to grab her camera. Prathamesh was shooting one day, they tried to grab his camera. And then they refused to file an FIR. I mean, anybody's allowed to shoot his own house, what's wrong with it? So it's always a mix. In Golibar, in 5 demolition drives, the police are like, I think on some level they know what's happening is wrong, and if it comes up in the media, then it stops. There's a very subtle thing on the state where they're somehow kind of understanding what this is wrong. But they're not benefiting from it. The builders benefit from it. Where does a beat officer benefit from that? Any other questions?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, that's
No, go.
okay. How is your work funded?
Funded? Really?
You have this space.
This? Free.
Okay, we
She
have
loves
to. This Studio X is helping. This is a non-profit space to begin with. They've been very generous. I approached Javed that we want to do an exhibition together because I started something called Khana Badosh. Sorry, no information is available, so it looks a little murky maybe. But Khana Badosh is also a non-profit, and we've just photographs have been done on the cheap. Studio X has been generous with projector, so everything's kind of been done by us really. And that's not to say that we've spent monumental amounts of money. We've just managed to do whatever we can to put it out there. And Javed was agreeable to this project. I mean, that's the most important thing.
And if you're asking about how I shoot all this, in travel, $4,000 you can go to them there and come back. 3,000, 2,000. I've lived there for like on $4,000 for 3 months. We don't have to pay rent in this city. Anybody who hates it, go travel. It is minimum amount of expenditure. $500 you can rent out a village.
Javed, even in your case, you started writing when you went there. Dantewada was not like in the news, but now again, there's been just generally speaking, the attention, the human rights journalism. There are a whole bunch of, and you've said, photojournalists and writers coming up that are more interested in the subject. So there's greater information available. Could you maybe elaborate on that a bit?
I think we all should thank Chidambaram for that, because the Maoist issue was disappearing under the radar until he popped up and said, I will.
Operation Green.
Yeah, Operation Green Light was basically his great sanctioning project, which got editors interested, because now there's this big guy talking about it. And
Yeah, this is also
everybody
like-
hates Chidambaram. You don't have to be a genius to.
But that actually was after he shifting from home to finance.
Yeah, exactly. From finance to home. When he was home minister, he started. And Chidambaram, the thing is, I started working for New Indian Express.
So now what is it?
Now he is, but this is 2009. So the first editors were interested were the South editors, but they hate that guy. This guy is up there. So my editor basically gave me a pitch. I mean, his brief was like, I know this bastard is taking the country for a ride, please go to it. That was simple. And then the first thing we did was like the first major atrocity, the photograph is not here, is Gopad village. That was where 9 people were killed and this young infant had his fingers cut off. That we put on the front page. It was the lead story on Sunday. So it was really his support that started, and I kept Indian Express, new South ka alag hota hai. Ek wo inka bhai udhar gaya, ek udhar gaya. So we started it, and then eventually other newspapers started getting involved. Like Hindu, for instance, has a very strange relationship with Chhattisgarh, because Siddharth Vardarajan is married to Nandini Sundar, who has been an anthropologist for the last 20 years in Bastar and who's knowing about all these things for so many years. But for 6 years, Hindu did nothing, very little. Frontline wrote a pro-paramilitary story. This is how you hunt down Maoists, by burning, killing this. I mean, it didn't make any sense. And suddenly, after a point, they started getting interested. And one by one, what my editor told me is like, when one guy writes, others will write, and that's exactly what happened. Hindu and New Indian Express, we were there first. Then Times of India came. Then nobody from HT is there, so if anyone's interested, you can go and pitch it to them. Indian Express fellow was there. Telugu has been coming and going. DNA is just starting right now. Rito Paul. Any other question?
Do you see any perspective, any possibility that that these things will stop? You are documenting, you are writing about this since many years.
thing is,
you're
it's
involved, and
yeah.
it seems that it is. I mean, repeating the same pattern
Yeah.
over and over again and again.
I'm actually a really big fan of history. So the thing is, everything you see today has been happening in this country for hundreds of years actually. I mean, I've just been reading a book where I'm going to draw the parallels of how Adivasis were treated by the British 150 years ago, how they treated now. Burning villages, kidnaps, unnecessary police firings, all that. And the thing is, it's a problem. I mean, it's a kind of debate that a lot of people have, especially in the movements also, that kya hoga, we'll just lose whatever and all that. But they still go ahead and keep on doing it. There's like this resilience that is beautiful. Like they know at some level they might not win, but they still do it anyway. Because there's no, it's not like there's no other option. It's a kind of a passion. And the thing is, like in different issues, it's different. Like in Bombay, it's very different because there is a choice here to leave it. You know, there's a choice to just take the builder's check and go. In Chhattisgarh, there's no option. You take it, you're dead. Now, it's a very complex thing when you look at what's actually happening in different areas, different understandings. But there's one very important thing that we all often discuss is Ambedkar. Ambedkar spoke not about political power or revolution, but he spoke about cultural evolution, cultural reformation in a way. Where the thing is, like today, the guys in Golibhar, for instance, who are pessimistic about getting anything, they talked and said, you know, irrespective of what my children know what the government is like. My daughter wanted to join the IAS, but now she saw how the IAS guys abused her father, pushed her mother, and she said not join the IAS. Like, there's a cultural evolution that's happening. And what's even more fascinating is that Golibhar is a slum where in 1992 the riots were horrible between the Hindus and Muslims. You know, there were a lot of killings. And today I talked to them, you know, about what happened back then. And they're like, you know, it was bad. Like the people who are sitting with today were the people who we were killing. And I was like, then when did the unity come? When did you people start talking to each other? Oh, when the builder came. Once he showed up, we started talking to each other. We started uniting under one cause. And it's true, the Muslims are now going to the Hindus are going to the Muslims. The unity is coming from that. So there's always a mix. I mean, there is a cultural benefit. Even though the government might just eventually prop the building up, but there will still be a very large population of people who understand something about what it was, what was the state, what was the government doing. And they have a young generation, like for instance these two boys, Frank and Prathamesh. I mean, he's 16 years old. He's got probably a major graduation by being picked up by the cops. It's a kind of cultural thing, no understanding.
Do poor and unempowered always know the system?
Not really. Prathamesh 3 साल बाद पहले मालूम थे सरकार ऐसी है. There you go. Look, again, the girl like who was saying, she wanted to join the IAS. The Mada guys are all IAS. She come and abuse them. She's like, I'm not going to do this job. It took time. I mean, there is also, you forget, there's a hegemony. You know, there's a very strong cultural hegemony that we are throwing down. That IAS is good. Washing machines, cricket, yevo. That's being subverted in some way, culturally in what is happening.
Any more questions?
Are you aware of other countries, probably on another level, international level, where they have, because mostly what's propagated is the fact that other countries have the advantage of being a monoculture as such.
Yeah,
And where we're not. So is there any other place which has successfully handled our sort of situations and we can learn from
No,
it?
actually it's unique because we have something that's called the caste system, which is brilliantly unique. I mean, Ambedkar said it's a delusion to believe in one country. He's absolutely right. Tagore was actually the first major anti-national. He was like, what is this national? It's a very childish idea. Like his theory was that, you know, we are so many people to call us together in one. And of course, the problem in this country is that every political theory that's come has ignored caste. You know, you talk class, but what's actually happening? And for instance, there's a very interesting thing about market democracy. Like what's happening in Western states, for instance, is that there is an element of the individual being above all, which has somehow ruined, you know, the social contract, you know, where people live in a community with certain empathy, certain sympathies, certain mercies. We had the caste system for 2,000 years. Do you think we have any of that? Do we have social contract? Do we have any empathy? Anything happens in the streets, the first reaction is come out. And we don't talk about this. We don't talk about what caste has done to our society in a social, psychological way. So it's a unique thing. I mean, because if you look at what's happening in India, for instance, if I talk about caste element, for instance, in Dantewada, the police, the Chhattisgarh State Police, almost all of them, the lower level guys are OBCs and SCs, and they're fighting Adivasis. And all the higher level guys are Sharmas, Mehtas, Bhatts, they're Brahmins. So there is a structure, and it plays again and again and again. And then what's also ironic in Golibar is that the caste structure is subverted because the builder is a Dalit, and he's breaking Dalit homes. You know, it's a very strange thing, but the idea is not about who's what, it's not identity, it's what's happening to people.
All right.
Thank you.